Well, hey, welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. Here I talk about role-playing games. I love role-playing games. Talk about other gaming and stuff too, but very much love role-playing games. We'll be talking about that again. Go ahead and click up my banner. We're back to AD&D 1E character creation. The last time I'd left off was I did the Rollmaster stuff on the weekend, but for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was 2 weeks ago. Uh, Doom Swords and I were talking about character creation. We'll go ahead and we'll talk about some more character creation again this time, but we'll focus on some of the things we didn't get to last time, like multi-class characters, as well as spell selection and stuff of that nature. Just waiting for Doom Swords to hop on in here and we'll get going. But in my lead in, go ahead and remove this one. We will add this one. There we go. Go back into character creation. Let me zoom in on that a little bit there. I created a character already in part for a multi-class character so that we can discuss multiclassing, and then we can also discuss spell selection and stuff of that nature. Hopefully there's nothing happened to my buddy there, Doomsword. I haven't heard from him in a little bit, but he's, from what I understand, no, not late. He arrives precisely when he means to. Pre-generated this character to get things going, and what we'll lay out here at this point is, since he's going to be a cleric magic user, I went ahead and put that up in there. We can start discussing. Oh, here we go. I got a message real quick. Aha. Yet another audio device problem. That's right. We'd rather listen to him than look at him. We'll let him go ahead and take care of his issue. But I'll lead up into this. What's an important piece to put on this particular page as the page out of the player's handbook. We'll discuss quickly what intelligence means for magic users. Right? You didn't just automatically get spells, you had to have them basically selected. And based on your intelligence, there was a rating of how difficult the spells were for you. And for every spell that you chose to put into your spell book, including ones at the start and any that you find, you got to roll your chance to know each listed spell. Basically, what this is the spell too complex, too difficult, or anything for your intelligence to match? Um, Most of the other ability scores in the player's handbook went up to 18, but on this one, if you notice, they did leave a 19 on here. Now, 19 is difficult to roll on 3d6, but it is possible to achieve that. Taking a quick look again at Landell, his intelligence is 17. So on there, he gets 6 additional languages, right, based on the intelligence, and all that's covered in the what languages stuff he knows is based on his race. A percent to know spell was 75%, minimum number of spells of 8, maximum number of spells is 14. Uh, Basically, what that relates to here is they discuss it in the book. Your minimum number of spells per level states the fewest number of spells by level or group a magic user can learn. Right, so this is, you have to have a minimum number in your book. So if you fail a whole lot of rolls, well, you could go back and try to relearn some of the ones as long as you get to reach to your minimum. Your maximum number of spells is the obverse of the minimum number, which can be known. So there is a certain limit to the number of spells that you can know. For the 17 intelligence, the maximum number he can know per level, or book, if you want to call it that way, or whatever, is 14. So he can't necessarily know all of the spells that are listed in that book. The Dungeon Master Guide, however, is where you get to figure out how you started out with what spells a magic user started out with. Now, the way this all lays this out is you've got somebody that taught you all your spells. Well, let me go ahead. Thank you, Dr. John Smith, for back then and listening to the conversation while I work. Yes. Conversation will commence as soon as Dusord figures out how to get that tin can and that string working again for us. He says he's working on it. I trust him. He's the tech guy. Now, I'm no longer a tech guy. Offensive spells, defensive spells, and miscellaneous spells. Basically, you know automatically read magic. Like it says in here, you're not going to be any good as anybody's apprentice if you can't do the read magic. You can't cast a read magic spell, well, then how are you going to learn any of this stuff, right? So that's an automatic spell that's on your list. Then select by random means. What that means is we will roll a d10, 1 through 10. I can hear fine, just not in studio. Well, well, I like listening to myself talk, so I don't know how all of that stuff's working out for you. Maybe it's a conflict or something. You're not going deaf, so you can be assured of that. So roll a d10, and then you choose one from each of those lists to add to the read magic that you start with. So basically, you start out with only 4 spells that come from your mentor. Choice should be left to the player, like it says down here. They also write in this book. Well, Gary Gygax writes in this book. So if you've got a fairly difficult campaign or something, maybe you can allow your magic user to just choose off of this list, regardless of the die roll or whatever. But I like the random element of it. Is not every master magician knew. Connect and listen through YouTube. YT. Well, I mean, YT means something different to me. Oh, that was YNT. That was different. That's a nice little rock and metal band in the 80s. My acronyms are different. What it does say in here in this book right down there is choice should be left to the player. Note that both Nistel's magic aura and Tensor's floating disc must be located by the character. Yeah, let's hop him on in here, see how he goes, see if we can hear him. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, there you go. We can hear you.
Hey, yeah, you know what? It's that you know how you go to enter the studio and there's a
Yeah.
test audio button? That's the
Yeah.
whole thing. I've been screwing with that for 30 minutes. That button doesn't work. Everything else works. Well, I'm here. And thanks for having me. Hope everybody's doing
Now,
well.
great. Appreciate having you here. Now you understand why I am a paramedic and not a tech support person any longer, right?
Oh, I understood that before. Yeah. I think you were doing a great job. I'm just going to watch.
Oh, you're just going to watch? Yeah. Okay. Let me ramble on for a little while first. Yeah. Okay. I think the reasoning behind the not actually being able to choose Nistel Magic Order or Tensor's Floating Disc off the list is to give the player something to go hunting for. Find these things in dungeons and stuff like this. Because if you get everything he wants, go into the Magic Users Guild, then what's the purpose of adventuring for him, right?
Right.
All right. Now, that is for your choice of magic. Well, here we go. Magic user spells, right? So we would go in, we would roll for those, and then we would put them on our list of spells, which, where was that on this page? Lost track of it. It's not one of my possessions. There we go. Known spells over here. Right, so you would fill these out. Right, and just start putting them in. Spells memorized per level. Well, as a first level magician, you can memorize 1 first level spell. but that is just for first level magician. Clerics are a little bit of a different story. Since he is a cleric
Yes.
magic user, we kick it back over to the player's handbook here and go back to wisdom table adjustments for clerics. All right, we'll take a look at Landel's wisdom here is 16. No, I didn't roll for these. I just arbitrarily put them on there so we could actually talk about those particular pieces. As a 16 wisdom, he gets on the spell bonus, it says 1 second level and his chance of spell failure. The less wise you are as a cleric, there is a chance for spell failure. Now, in early original Dungeons and Dragons, everybody had a chance of spell failure. There was a percent function, I guess you could call it, that you would roll and see if your spell actually worked. They did away with that for the arcane, the magic user, and the illusionist, but it kind of kept it here a little bit for clerics. High wisdom, you could understand the prayers and what was going on within those books. Where it says 1 second level, right? But one thing to keep in mind, that is cumulative. So not only does he
Hmm.
get 1 second level for 16, he gets 1 second level for 15, one first level for 14, and one first level for 13. So he begins with his one, basically, and then two more first level spells. When he reaches the level appropriate to be able to cast second level spells, he will gain those extra spells there. So, in addition to the one that he can normally pray for every day, he can pray for two more second level spells every day. So, I would just me put that on my sheet and known spells one, and I would put a /3 for first level spells. And then we just start filling those
Right.
out. Now, there's not a whole lot of room on there for cleric spells. One, the way I think of it is the cleric has a prayer book where he has all these spells that are available to them, and he just in that morning he prays for whatever spells that he think is appropriate. At lower levels, that's just the way things work. At higher levels, there's a little bit of DM fiat in there, where at high levels you may pray for a particular spell, but the dungeon master may decide that your deity thinks this different spell is more appropriate for you and grants you that particular spell. So not only are you gaining spells as things go through, you need to play your character, you need to play it well, and then you're petitioning your deity or your deity's agents um, for these spells. So there's role playing aspects into just praying for spells in the morning. It's an excellent way. I like the way this thing kind of works out. It gives higher
Yeah.
wisdom characters a little bit more of a bonus.
Yeah, and I also like how at least here, the arcane spell failure has been removed, as you touched on. Magic users have a tough enough go of it at
Yeah,
first level and that sort of thing in the first place. And I kind of like the idea how wisdom, being that the spell is prayed for from the deity, and your wisdom is going to be a determinant of that. Intelligence, I don't think should lower intelligence because you learned the spell in the first place, right? So lower intelligence, having a lower intelligence, shouldn't affect whether or not you're going to be able to cast the spell that you
right.
already learned.
Right, because you know it, and the chance of spell failure for the wisdom is just did you understand the um, mechanism of the orders, the stuff that came out of your deity or your deity's agent that granted you that particular spell. Right.
Agreed.
With those bonuses, a spell. Well, you don't get any. If you have a chance of spell failure, you're not getting bonus spells because you're not wise enough for them at that point. Right. So there's those particular things as far as spell choice and stuff goes. That was one of the main things I wanted to cover here. Um, uh, your day-to-day acquisition of spells that's listed in here. You as a cleric, you pray for them. As a magic user, you just get them and you have your list. There's only so many of them that you can memorize for that particular day, right? And here's another piece in here that I really like in here: your spell level, the rest time that's required for once you've cast that spell in order to rememorize it again. For a first or second level spell, you need 4 hours of rest before you can choose it again. So, in an active campaign, that means you don't necessarily have to rest for the night just to get a first level spell back. You could hole up somewhere for an afternoon and recover one of those spells and have use for it again. So the one spell per day matrix thing kind of falls apart a little bit when you're looking at it this way. Let's see, Player's Handbook. That was, we'll spin it down here to clerics, right? Spell level, right? It just says one. At first level, you get one, and then you get those bonus spells. Well, he gets a couple extra bonus spells to go, and those are the ones that he can memorize. Right? But if he casts one and then gets the chance to do a 4 hour rest, he can pick up another one. From my reading and my studying, let me flip it down. Druids would be basically get the same sort of thing. Where's Magic User? Let me scroll down to Magic User real quick. We can find that. Magic User. There we go. First level spell. From my reading and my studying, the way Gary Gygax ran his campaign is he granted a second first level spell to magic users of high intelligence.
Yeah, that's what I've understood as well.
Right, so 17 or 18, you get an extra first level spell. So a higher intelligence magic user can do a little more than just one spell a day, which would not terrible.
Yeah, that one first level spell is pretty rough. But then again, it kind of justifies them not having a chance for
Yeah,
spell failure from a
right. There's no spell
game
failure or
balance
anything like that
perspective.
for them. And the other thing is too is spell components. You got to make sure you gather up all the appropriate spell components and stuff like that to have that available. And most of them aren't too drastic an item unless the spell does something particularly special, like identify. You got to have
Right.
that pearl or something like that because it's a particularly a powerful spell. Maybe one day we can sit down and we could go over some of those special item spells too, and cover maybe our reasoning behind what some of those things are appropriate
Agreed.
for. Um, for the most part, though, 4 hours of rest, that first level magic user gets it back, and that's not the only thing he does. One thing he's got to remember is he's got um, the most number of different types of magic items when he finds them available for him to use. So his main thing isn't so much casting spells, but utilizing magic items to extend his power and stuff by that nature. Also, why wouldn't a high intelligence character be your research arm? Basically, yes, you can go higher and petition sages to find certain things, but this is a guy who spent his entire life digging through libraries. When you're in town, you go digging through libraries. There you go. There's how you can put in your adventure hooks and stuff as your magic user is going to do some research and stuff for you. How do you use this particular item? Well, he knows how to go looking for tomes, finding command words and stuff like that. It's a
Yeah.
good role playing element for that high intelligence magic user to use skills as much as just waiting around to cast that spell.
Right, and from like a game perspective, min-max perspective, or whatever, he's
Mm.
also the only guy that's going to get ninth level spells, eighth and ninth level spells,
Oh
and he has
yes.
the most extensive spell list by far of all of the character classes.
Oh, it's got a lot. Even yes, you've got um,
And they're not alignment restricted. Sorry.
no alignment restrictions, anything like this. Well, technically speaking, neither do you get clerics. Clerics maximum these seventh level spells. Same thing with druids, but magic users. Here we go, all the way up to ninth level spells, and there's some pretty powerful and potent spells and stuff in there. However, that is also driven by intelligence as well.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember where that particular table was. You have to have a certain intelligence to reach
Yeah, I
some of
think
those.
it's table two of intelligence. Right. It's the same
Uh,
thing, I think, where it's little asterisks in a table
was there?
footnote.
What? Okay, yeah. Let me find that page. Yeah, let me go back up
Yeah.
here. Like I said, I should have did some cut and paste and made some of these, but decided at the last minute how I wanted to run some of these things. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Ability for magic users, right? Possible number of additional languages. Ooh. Here we go. 18 is the minimum intelligence for use of a ninth level magic spells. But just because he's, our Landel here, just because he started the game with a 17 intelligence, doesn't mean at some point he may not gain an 18 intelligence. There are ways to increase intelligence. We talked about some of that the first time through when we went over the age and aging abilities, where, let's see, adds a point of wisdom, middle aged. Now, your magic user is most likely to be the one starting out pretty close to middle aged, right? When he reaches middle age, he adds a point of intelligence. So, bam, he could go up to an 18 in that case. Or plenty of magic items and things like this that there are available out there. Tomes and ion stones, whatever that is, that grant um, intelligence points to you. So, you're not really limited to what you start to roll with. There are chances of increasing those ability scores as well. All right, so we've talked about spell acquisition um, and spell failure and stuff like this that's related to intelligence and wisdom. What else do we want to cover here? Oh, you're multi-classed. All righty. Well, one of the things we got to determine is, armor and weapons permitted and stuff, right? Well, that falls into place with proficiencies. As I understand the way this works and the way we've played it, let me get down there to that table. Keep bouncing back and forth. Weapon proficiency table. He is a cleric and a magic user. So he starts out with the initial number of weapons for the cleric and the initial number of weapons available to the magic user. So he could start with 3 weapon proficiencies. Cleric is limited to blunt weapons and stuff like this by the nature of how that works, but being a magic user, he could also choose under the magic user section a dagger, you know. So his staff that he uses could come from the cleric proficiency if you wanted to do things of that nature. I know a lot of games that run where, yeah, John Collins is exactly. We'll get to that too, right? Cleric magic is interesting, so armor, blunt weapons, and edge weapons and stuff. Also, exactly, anything's open to them. Some of the restrictions kind of blend over because you're blending the classes and stuff together. Yeah, here we go. That one there, perfect, right? Side quest, hunt down rare material components. Now, you're in the dungeon. The likelihood of finding bat guano for your fireball spell is pretty high, but some of the other things you may need to go after. Pearls, right? You need pearls for your identify spell. You got to go buy those 100 gold piece pearls. They don't just lie around on a dungeon floor. They come in treasure, or you may need to go to a town, a coastal town or something where they're close enough to where there might be pearl divers or something to buy those things. So there's some quest items and stuff available. Absolutely. Clark magic user interesting. So armor, blunt edge weapons and stuff also exactly right. The multi-class, and we got with a half elves here, and it's also explained in under elves. The multi-class character is not governed by armor restrictions like a single class magic user would be. He's allowed to wear armor and cast spells. Um, it's just a benefit of being the multi-class.
Yeah, and it should be added that based on my reading of the PHP and other materials, the only restrictions that are multi-class that apply between classes are any thief multi-class,
Right.
right?
In order to perform any thief functions, it's that you cannot be wearing
Right.
any more than leather. Studded leather is not leather. Anything more than leather, you can't do your thief functions. So You could cast spells in chainmail as a magic user. You know, if you did fighter, cleric, magic user, thief, for example, or something like that, you could cast spells wearing that chainmail, but you couldn't go around sneaking quietly, hiding in shadows, picking locks, picking pockets, wearing that chainmail as well. And another thing that I also we've always played this way, and it seems to me that that's the way it is as well, is your starting money. You get the starting money for both classes. Nice. So there's another incentive to play multiclass. However, and as we discussed before, multiclasses have limits to the levels that they can acquire based on their certain um, classes. Um, for our cleric magic user, he is limited, and it also tells you on that table where are we going here? A little bit further up. There's everything explained for elves. The race is in there. Okay, where is it at? Minimum, maximum scores. There's that little subtable on the bottom of it. So, half elf, he can be a cleric 5 and a magic user up to 8. Note number 7, half elven magic users with intelligence of less than 17 are limited to 6th level. Those with an intelligence of 17 are limited to 7th level. So, as a 17 intelligence half elf, maximum he can do is 7th level. Even though the chart says 8, he would need to gain that 18 intelligence to go to that top out at that level 8 magic user. I know a
Right, and
lot
that's
of
a. I
games
mean,
played that did not use these level limits. They are there for a reason, and the game tends to break down if you don't use these level limitations.
yeah. I mean, you basically have to use them if you're going to run a game that's not that doesn't end up being out of control and favor the demi-human. And not only does it add flavor, but it's also a balance thing and makes sort of offsets the attractiveness of the multi-class character
Right.
appropriately. Because if I know, oh, I've got this 16 intelligence, I'm going to be able to make it to level 6 magic user. I'm going to be able to make it to level what 5 cleric, uh, and my advancement stops there.
Mhm.
That makes a big difference.
You've got some incentive to go digging for some of these special items. You know, you go, oh, well, let me go look in this huge library in our Library of Alexandria equivalent place in our main town. Where might I find this Ioun stone to go raise my intelligence, or where might this book be located? What dungeon might I find it in? You know, and then
Right.
base adventurers around trying to, hey, how do I get these things to boost me up a little bit?
And as an aside, I was reading something interesting in I think a polyhedron magazine today, or an old dragon. Somebody had asked the question. I can't remember exactly where, but it asked the question if these level limits change. If, say, you're using, like a girdle of giant strength as a halfling or something like that, they indicate, and probably rightfully so, that that only happens if that magic item or a wish or something
It's
permanently
permanent,
increases that ability score.
permanently increased. Right.
Right.
So carrying something around that's only a temporary boost is not going to give you those increases. Right. Over there are spells like permanency and stuff like this, though. So
Yes.
yeah, they help with that sort of thing. So there we go. We've covered cleric spells, magic user spells, how you start, what spells you start out with, and how those are acquired. We've talked a little bit about now level limits here, since we're talking about multi-class, as well as starting money and starting proficiencies. What am I forgetting? Well, we didn't buy any weapons or equipment or anything like this. He's not a human, so he can't have psionics, so we can skip past that, right? Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Turning undead. Turning undead is handy.
Indeed. And
Yeah.
should we mention, because of course we spoke about it briefly, but these multi-class and dual class characters, because it's specified in multi-class entries, but they
Yes.
use the best saving throw matrices and
Ah,
best
right.
attack throw
Yeah, we talked
matrices.
about that earlier. Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
did you? Right.
And we didn't put this in the video yet. Let's go ahead and put it. When
Oh,
you,
sorry.
a multi-class character, you can think about it this way: since you're concurrently running in those classes, you gain the best of the saving throws based on your classes and the best of the attack matrices based on the classes that you're running. That kind of bears itself out. What you and I discussed earlier was if you were dual classing, you were switching between professions, you were to drop one for temporarily and move on to another one. What do you do then? Right? Do you revert to a lesser saving throw? Do you revert to a lesser attack matrix if that's what's required under the new class? And I think we reasoned it out well enough that no, you don't forget these things just because you change to a new class, right? You would still maintain those skills, right? Just that you would have to use them under the strictures of the new class, right? Now that would
Right.
be nice to be a seventh level fighter and a first level thief and backstab on the fighter's hit table, absolutely. But you would,
Yeah.
yeah, make that a little bit better, right? But you would be restricted to the weapon you can use it in. Well, and then since thieves can use swords, okay, there you go. And that's another thing too is that backstab damage only applied to melee weapons that I can recall. Oh,
Yeah. And
right.
I think in before Unearthed Arcana, the or Unearthed Arcana, the thief was restricted to short sword, as I recall.
In
I could be
Unearthed
wrong,
Arcana
but
is when the thief in just straight up player's handbook, right, without anything else, cannot use bows, and it seems to be a rare, very popular item is to give thieves. Oh, where'd that table go? I know I just passed it.
yeah, I think they put it way up in the top, didn't they?
Yeah,
Maybe
it would
not.
make sense to put it. Oh, before the classes begin. That's where they put it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, they there it was.
Right, thief, club, dagger, dart, sling, sword. Um,
And 4 stars.
the
Right.
thief may
Short
use a
sword,
short sword,
broadsword,
broadsword, or
longsword.
long
Okay.
sword, but not a bastard sword or two-handed sword. Too big of a weapon, right? So, yeah, he's got. If you were a fighter first and then became a thief as part of your dual classing, you could still use the sword that you've been carrying around, right? Because it would still function with your thief skills. But that two-handed sword you've been wailing on monsters with, you'd have to put that away for a while. Your longbow, got to put that away for a while. But Unearthed Arcana as a supplement to it, and I think there's a lot of things in Unearthed Arcana, and you and I have had this discussion on a number of occasions. It's broken. It there's a lot of good stuff that applies to the player characters basically, and monsters don't get them. So fairness went out the window when some of that Unearthed Arcana stuff came in. Now, there's some good things in it. I do like cantrips. I think those are an excellent addition for Mads users to have some low level stuff that he can do. And you sacrifice a
Agreed.
first level spot and you get four small low power cantrips. And you and I had a look at that cantrips for clerics out of the Dragon Magazine issue. And I like that idea too, to give them some low power things that they can do as well.
Yeah.
But that's not strict by the book player's handbook D&D. So no short bows for thieves until you get to Unearthed Arcana. Right, a sling, and
Right.
we've discussed this when we were creating um, Rothgar. That sling is a very underrated weapon. It really is.
Yes.
Let's see. So well, dart. Dart is an awesome weapon with a rate of fire of 3. That is definitely a
Yeah.
thief
Yeah.
weapon.
It's
When
a great
magic
weapon.
user can fling 3, he can't hit anything with them, but he can fling 3 darts.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually a great point. You take a fighter thief or something, say a dwarven fighter thief, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you equip him with like 6 darts, that guy's getting the attack matrix of the fighter and 3 attacks with a ranged weapon.
Yep.
Um, that's
Yep.
excellent. And you give him a high dexterity and whatnot. That guy's a damage machine.
Yes. Yes. So it's not like he's useless. Oh, I just threw my first level
Right.
spell and I got nothing else to do. Well, I can start flinging darts and, and tagging people, right?
Right.
Let's see what else we need to look at as far as talking about for multi-classing going. Nothing right off the top of my head that I can see right away. Multi-class. We've discovered most of the nuances about multi-classing and the fact that you can use uh, armor and weapons, mixing classes and stuff together, and the only real stricture for it is just it being able, if you wanted to use thief skills and abilities, you had to be in leather. But otherwise, if you were in chainmail, a multi-classed elf could cast spells, arcane spells, whereas a human could not. Right.
Right.
Let's see. What else can we see in here? Let's cover the dual classing rule since we're talking about multi-classing. That is something special. Multi-classing, all you had to have was the ability, minimum ability scores to make the class restrictions that you had. Right, and there's some list of combinations. Right, Cleric Ranger, I think, is an outstanding multi-class character. That one is
For sure.
character with two classes. Unlike the multi-class characters who are of non or semi-human race, the character with two classes must be human. They should have put an asterisk next to that because a bard
Right.
is, well, I guess you could call him a character with three classes. He just has to go one at a time. He goes through two and then becomes the third when he finishes the second. That can be a half elf.
Yes.
You switch from one class or another. Yeah, oh, here we go. To attain a second class, the character must switch his or her profession at some point. Thereafter, no progression in the original class is possible. Whereas with multi-class, you're kind of going up simultaneously in each one. If you dual class, if you change your class, you're done advancing in the other one. That's it. You're whatever level you reach, that's the end of it, and that's where you stop with that one. In order to switch from one class to another, the character must have an ability score of 15 or more and the principal attributes, the ability of the original class, and a 17 or 18 and the principal attributes of the class changed to. So you need to take a look at it. A fighter, if you wanted to switch from being a fighter to another class, you had to have at least a 15 strength and then a 17 in whatever primary ability of the class. For example, magic user. Um, you had to have your
Right.
15 strength as your fighter, and then when you switch to magic user, you needed to have that at minimum 17 intelligence. That doesn't mean that you couldn't plan to do this somewhere along the lines, and then when you found enough magic to boost your intelligence up to the minimum, you could switch. Then that's acceptable, right? It isn't though you couldn't do this because you didn't start the game with a 17. It's at the time of the switch you have to have a permanent, like we mentioned earlier, ability of 17 or
Yeah,
18.
and this is right, exactly. And this is one of the things that's really interesting about 1E versus other editions is that additional restriction. So you might look at in 1E and say, well, how come everybody doesn't dual class, play a character with two classes, whatever? Well, that's the reason because if you,
It's hard to qualify
in
for.
later editions, it's yeah, in later editions, it's like, oh, I'm going to splash a level of whatever and then come back to it if they want to and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
I don't know how
consider
many
the guy.
uh, friends that I played with
Yeah,
played fifth edition. Their first thing they do is they go one level of fighter and then they go magic user for the rest of the game, so that they can cast spells and armor. Because the restriction in D&D fifth edition is you cannot cast spells and armor that you're not proficient with. Well, a fighter is proficient with
right.
all armor, so they take that quick dip and then off they go, and they're
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
gaming the rules a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And this Conversely, let's say you want to do the same thing. Well, now I have to create my fighter, and he has to have a 17 or 18 intelligence to make that jump to magic user even possible in the first place, plus the 15 in strength, you know?
Sure. Well, and if we're using level 3, which is my favorite method, and you rolled good stats to be a fighter, but then look, you got an 18 dex. Ooh, great.
Right.
I made great numbers to make my minimum fighter. I've got a 15, and then maybe later on down the road, since I've got such a high dexterity, I might want to switch to thief partway through, right? Or you rolled a real high intelligence. Maybe okay, partway through when we're doing here, I'm going to switch to be a magic user for a while, and then combine the two in a grand campaign game type thing.
Yeah, and that
Uh,
method does give you the best opportunity to do something like that. So
sure.
that's another point for method 3.
Yeah, it says note that nearly any combination of classes is thus possible. In effect, cleric and fighter, cleric and paladin, cleric and ranger, etc. Alignment will preclude some combinations. A thief, based on the rules that are written in here, must be neutral. That was, I believe, that was changed in Unearthed Arcana, right? But it must be
Yeah,
neutral. So you can't be paladin thief because
right.
you would lose all your paladin abilities if you switched alignment. Um, so there's an example for you there. Now, whereas you could be ranger thief because a ranger can be neutral good, and a thief could be neutral good because it is neutral. Right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense why somebody that makes a living, stealing and picking pockets and stuff would be good aligned, but it is possible based on the rules. Yeah. All right. When a character opts to cease his or her old profession and become a new class, character retains a number of hit dice and commensurate hit points due to the character at the level of his or her class. However, all other functions of the character are at first level of experience. Right. So, like we just mentioned, yeah, you keep your hit points, and it doesn't say it in there, but you also keep the saving throws that you had attained at that point because you've learned dodging breath weapons and stuff. And you keep the attack matrix because just because you switched from being a fighter to now you want to be a magic user doesn't mean you forgot how to use your dagger. That just means that's all you can use. Yeah.
Right, and it's worth mentioning that it does define that in multiclass, specifically by the text, if I'm not mistaken. It just doesn't do that in dual class. But dig deeper and you'll find it.
Mhm.
So I think multiclass somewhere it specifies that it might not be in the multiclass position specifically, but it's mentioned around there.
I think it's mentioned. Where did I see it? I remember reading it. And I can't remember exactly where it was, but yeah, it is definitely
Okay,
in
yeah,
in there that it kind of defines that. So there we go. There we talked a little bit about a character with two classes. Doesn't say dual class here. It just says the character with two classes. Now, dual and two are kind of the same. I think it was shortened by players and dungeon masters over the decades to just calling it dual classing. Now, with that, it doesn't necessarily say you couldn't quit your second profession and start a third. Nowhere in there does it say you can't do that. You would just have to have the 17 or 18 in the next one as well. So it makes it a little tough. The bard is the exception to this. And since we're here, we're talking about it now. And one of the things I would like to talk about, we got some time going. Bard, we'll mention it because he is a multi-professioned class. Mention it here
yeah.
real
And I
quick.
don't think we've even got into him yet, have we? Like I don't think
Oh, we haven't.
we've just
Moved
touched on
past
him
him.
in
There he
passing.
goes. Bard must have scores of 15 or better in the following abilities: strength, wisdom, dexterity, and charisma. Furthermore, a bard must have at least a 12 score in intelligence, and 10 in constitution. Nowhere in there does it say you must have a 17 in dexterity, like it does under dual classing. This is a special or a character with two classes. This is a special type of multi-class character where it's got its own rules, and anywhere where you've got specific rules, they would supersede the general rules somewhere else. So you're switching from fighter to thief, but you must have at least those minimums that are mentioned there. You don't necessarily have to have the 17 that is detailed
Which
in
is
the
interesting,
dual class. It's interesting,
right?
yeah. But
Because you could use this to start out as a fighter and then become a thief without meeting the prerequisite to dual class to the thief, and then just be like, oh, never mind, or die
no,
before
no, I don't
taking
think it
druid.
would be. I don't think I would say never mind. Somehow or another, there would be some sort of wrath of some sort of something or other
Yeah,
that would come down on you
blue
for
bolts from the
cheating the
heavens.
rules.
Yes, sir.
As a game master, I'd say no. You're not really playing your character to the best of your character's abilities and stuff.
Yep.
You are cheating the rules. You don't gain any experience. You're
There you
stuck
go.
here at this forever now. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
Right. Bards begin play as fighters, and they must remain exclusively fighters until they have reached at least fifth level experience. Anytime thereafter, and in any event prior to attaining eighth level, they must change their class to that of thieves. Now, I know a lot of players that they do that. They go straight to eighth. Well, they can't even do that. They got to go to seventh. Well, seventh as a fighter, you can do three every two. So they go to seventh level as a fighter to be three every two. So they get three attacks every 2 rounds, and then make the switch. So
Right.
they keep some of the advantages of being a fighter with the multi attacks per round because that's highly useful.
Yes, for
And then
sure.
and then sometime between fifth and ninth level of ability. Remember, in order to be a dual class, there in order to be you have to exceed the previous class's um, level to gain use of both. So if
Right.
you went to seventh level as a fighter, you would have to go to eighth level as a thief to switch to become
Right.
a bard. And once you got to that eighth level, then you become the quote unquote bard at that time, and you switch over to a new, basically, class and progression. Now, six-sided dice for accumulated hit points. You still acquire hit points. You're now in another class and you're acquiring more hit points. You're going to be a damage sponge as a bard,
Yes.
right? Because you will have gotten all 7 levels of fighters hit points, all those d10s. You'll have gotten 8 of d6s from the thief, and now you get d6s now for accumulated hit points as a bard. That's what that asterisk means.
And
You
you better
start
have a
out with
ton
the
of
hit points that
experience
have been
points.
accumulated for those other classes.
Right.
Yep. And a number of druid spells by spell level. Now, subsequent bards after this um, have gone to not just druid spells, but they've gone into like magic user spells and stuff like this for bards that are in other editions. But this is the original one here, and you get druid spells. And it's not that druid spells are useless. There's some fantastic druid spells. They just wanted to add some extra ones in there. Not sure why druid was chosen, but it is what it is. And then there's some good
Yeah.
again. There's some good druid spells.
Yeah, right. And I think it's basically just the idea that it was like, Irish or Celtic inspired or whatever you would say. That,
Sure.
because you can look at the college names and stuff like that. And yeah, down there. And it's clear that it has like a nature bent to it or whatever.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, definitely clear for that. Bard's Table 2, your level of experience as a bard. You begin to acquire additional languages too. You know,
Right.
nowhere in the game does it say how to acquire other languages as any other class? So you're kind of stuck with what you got, basically. Well, no. If you increase intelligence, then you get a chance. Well, you've got more languages that you can know, so that would be one way. But if unless you don't do that, becoming a bard is the only other way to learn additional languages. And you can
Yeah.
charm. Now, this is where the bard trope on the internet came about, where
Yep.
the only reason why there are half dragons is because of bards, right? So here's your charm percentage. Now, I would be reasonable with that one. The bar that your dragon's not going to let you charm it.
No, no, I agree.
Legend lore and item knowledge percentage. Now this is fantastic because your whole career is based on knowing things, knowing the history and legends and and cultures and that sort of thing. You have the knowledge of, well, what is this particular item? Whereas the high level magic user must cast a spell to gain that knowledge. This is something you've gained through experience as a bard class, which is an outstanding ability because identify is fallible. Yeah. Casting an identify spell
Right.
may give you a power of a particular magic item you picked up. It may give you a false power. It may give you nothing for all your expense that you've gone through. Whereas legend lore is a big bonus. Now it's not high to start with, but it does climb at a fairly steady rate.
Yeah.
College is an important distinction to a bard, and he or she will not associate with a bard of a lesser college. Yes, the exceptions to this rule are the Magna alumni. Ooh, maybe this is Illuminati. We could go and do a test in here. Will happily aid by advice and suggestion any bard of any level. So, looks to me like bards are kind of solo characters as far as party goes.
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, and I mean, really, if they're if they've attained those types of levels and whatnot, and the experience, that's a prerequisite to have gained them. You know, it's not like typically they're going to get that by traveling along with your average adventuring party.
Ooh, thanks for stopping by. That is at DLSD. I wish this let me do it like YouTube does. Underscore 25. He's got to
Yeah.
gonna go catch other streams. By all means, catch it on the rerun. Please, while you're here, like and subscribe this for me. Help me out. Get this spread around a little bit. Add some stuff for the channel. Drop by and go see old Doomsword stuff as well. You know, he had great stuff before him and I started talking. So,
As do you, and did you?
all right. Bard always engages in combat at the level he or she attained as a fighter. Bard is able to function because there is no hit chart for a bard, right? So you fight as a fighter of that level. All saving throws are made in the most favorable table. Here we go. There's another listing there where saving throws are done on the favorable table. With the actual bard level considered as that of a druid. So, you're a ninth level bard, you get saving throws of a ninth level druid. Yeah. If that's favorable for whatever.
Right.
And it also discusses your charming most creatures. Interesting. Not just humanoids, but you can play your instrument and charm most creatures. Depends, did you want to be Jethro Tull and was it Ian Anderson and run around with a flute, or did you want to grab a lute? Right. There are instruments of the bards, magic items that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide and the random tables, and those would, if If you've got a bard in your group, sprinkle a few of those into the dungeon so they have to go find those particular items. Right. The let's see. Due to training, bard has knowledge of many legendary and magical items after first level of experience, and this knowledge increases as the bard progresses upwards in level. If some legendary knowledge is appropriate and the dice score indicates that the bard has knowledge in the area, then his or her ability will deliver information similar to the magic user spell legend lore without actually touching an item. The bard also has a like chance of determining its magical properties and alignment. This later ability is limited to armor, miscellaneous way. It gives you a list of things you can do. Um, uh, Magic user, if he were to use his identify spell, he has to touch the item, like don a cloak or pick up and swing a sword around to get a feeling for whatever its powers are. And in doing so, would invoke any sort of curse that were on that particular item. Whereas
Right.
this bard's ability, all he's got to do is glance at it, take a look, and say, "Nope, that's what this is right here." Bam, without having to touch it to invoke any particular curse that may be on the item. And that doesn't mean that okay, that looks like a cloak of protection, and it's really just a cloak of poisonousness. He's not going to identify that part of it, but he doesn't have to put that curse upon himself to identify those items.
Right.
I think Bard is an outstanding character.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And there's nothing to say. It's primarily just like class level titles and stuff like that. If the Celtic thing doesn't fit for you, there's actually some variants in
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Magazine, and you can adapt it to your world. If you're running, a Greek campaign or a Roman campaign or a Celtic campaign, or some sort of Albion thing or anything like that. Even sort of an Oriental Eastern type campaign, you could change those things as you saw fit and still make a bard type of character fit in.
Sure, it's an optional character. That's why it was included in the appendix because it's outside of all the rest of the regular rules. Well, we're hitting up here on an hour. I think we can poke around with a couple other things for a little while longer if you like.
Sure.
One of the ideas was the special characters, and I think I was thinking about maybe doing a different, but we can talk about special characters now while we're here. Here's my favorite, the monk. Now, I'm not a favor of this particular monk that is in this edition. I much prefer the one as described in the Dragon 53, if I remember the exact issue correctly. I think there's some limitations in this one that make him definitely an undesirable character to try starting with. But it is
Yeah.
a special character and listed out of order. Right, the monk is the most unusual of all characters, the hardest to qualify for, and perhaps the most deadly. That is why the class is given out of alphabetical order at the end of the section pertaining to character classes. Right, because he isn't really a subset of any other class, and his M comes before T, but they talk about thieves and assassins first. Oh, your monk. To be a monk character, a character must have the following a minimum ability score: strength 15, wisdom 15, dexterity 15, and constitution of 11. Tough to get. Uh, Except
Yeah.
if you're using method 3, you have the best chance of actually getting all of those together. Um,
For sure.
right. Now, method 3 may not give you the best chance of getting your paladin. That's probably still method 1, so that you may have the chance of rolling a 17 charisma. Um, More likely to on 4d6 drop the lowest as you would be on just 3d6. But it's still possible.
Right.
Monks are the monastic ascetics who practice rigorous mental and physical training and discipline in order to become superior. Therefore, there must always be lawful alignment. Oop, awesome. Thank you, John Collins, for joining me put them up here. Thanks, John Collins,
Thank you.
for checking in on us. We much appreciate having you here. All
Indeed.
right. That wealth of knowledge. It's because we are both bards and we spend a lot of time poring. Well, we're also magic users. We spend a lot of time poring over tomes, reading them with the
Too much, perhaps.
because it's
Yeah.
because it's written by Gary Gygax. We have to have the dictionary at our side as we're reading it.
Right. And there's something in the monk there that's interesting that just inadvertently, because it's just the sentence at the end. Dexterity doesn't get these guys an armor
No,
class
no, is that yeah?
adjustment. Right. So
And
no defensive adjustment for dexterity on a monk.
let me finish typing. Not just that. Yeah, they don't get any armor class bonuses. Dexterity gets a no armor class adjustment, and they are not fighters. They have a high constitution. They still only get the +2, which
Right. Right.
I that's one of the things that I didn't really like about it. Wait a minute, they they're a kind of a warrior type. Why don't get they get the abilities? Well, if you look at it that way, a cleric would be more along the lines of the equivalent of our like Knights Hospitaller or Knights Templar or something, because they're religious fighters. They don't get it either. They're not purely strictly fighters. So you can see where that
Right.
would kind of make
And
a little bit of sense.
yeah, and I guess for consistency and flowing through purposes, I mean they actually attack on the cleric matrix anyways. So
Hmm.
I think it
Yes.
is right. So yeah, monk, druid, cleric.
Yeah, cleric, druid, and monk. Right, exactly.
Right.
Well, nope. No, they do not. With respect to combat, monks attack on the same table as thieves. That is a couple of paragraphs down. All right. A brief study of character classes, table 1 and 2 will reveal that the monk appears to be quite weak, even considering all of, at the topmost level, a monk can have 18, albeit four-sided hit dice, an average of 45 hit points, without constitution score additions, if any.
It's
Being weak, yeah,
the DMG actually changes that in the attack matrices. So I think that's where I got it from. So you've got
okay.
attack matrix on page 74 for cleric, druid, monk.
Well, let's go find
So
it.
that's just an example of something that seems to be, something really important in the player's handbook that was changed after the Dungeon Master's Guide came out.
And they would
So while
never
the
do
text,
anything like that. Yeah, see? Tag
no, they
matrix for
wouldn't.
cleric, druids, and monks, and here's the one for thieves. Yeah, they would never do anything like that.
Yeah,
Which
and
it,
if
it
you're
does
just
make
reading the
sense,
player's
being the
handbook,
clerical monastic. That's about as clerical as you're going to get as far as that stuff goes, right? They should get a
right?
little bit better chance of fighting and attacking. I mean, this isn't the everybody was kung fu fighting type of monk necessarily. However, they add one half a hit point per level of experience to the amount of damage they score when successfully tagging an opponent with a weapon. Now, this isn't from their hands. They use a short sword. They get extra damage, which is a kind of nice addition to it too. It makes them a little more powerful. Still kind of squishy,
Right.
but a little more powerful. A D4
Yeah,
hit
yeah,
point.
and I guess that
Yeah,
the concept there would be sort of the concept of pressure points and understanding exactly where to strike opponent for maximum effect and that kind of thing. So it's a cool little flavor thing.
sure. Open end
Oh
combat
yeah, they say
damage.
that.
Table shown below. Right there's where's it at here? Open hand combat damage. Right, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 6. It kinds of increases as things go along. That your unarmed attack does more than the average person. Right. Not sure where you can find it in there, but anybody punching somebody would be 1 hit point of damage plus strength bonus. Monks are a little bit different. As they progress in level, they get increasing levels of open-handed damage. Now that is open-handed damage. After a certain point, their skills allow them to strike creatures that can only be struck by magical weapons, which is good. But then again, why would you want to run up and slap that white when by merely touching it removes levels?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And undead can't be stunned or anything like that either. And that's a good thing. And it's something that they
right.
had changed in later editions. Um, was the chance to stun or even kill an opponent. Opponent is stunned by a monk for 1 to 6 melee rounds. If the score of the monk's 2 hit die score exceeds the minimum number required for a hit by 5 or more. Example, if 15 is required, a score of 20 would indicate a stun. Now that is nice. That is nice. And it is not unusual in a combat for somebody to hit with a, especially if you've got a few levels under your belt, with a strike that's 5 or more for 1d6 melee rounds. And stunned characters in the, if I recall from the Dungeon Master's Guide, is +4 to hit. Once you've stunned him,
Right.
everybody can
I
start
think
wailing
that's
on
it.
him. Yeah. Let's see. The 2 hit scores rolled by the monk are never modified by any strength ability bonuses. So it doesn't matter. If 15 strength's all you need. You don't need an 18 because it doesn't change anything for you. Let's see. The chance to kill it is, let's see. Chance to kill as a percentage equals the armor class of the opponent modified by the number of experience levels above 7, which the monk has attained. So not only can you stun somebody, but your blow, depending on the opponent's armor class, may outright kill them. So take down a high level fighter with one blow. AC -1 is a negative chance for killing, as an example, but a monk of ninth level, 2 above 7th, would allow a 1% chance of killing. Right. So you can start running through it. Oop, Dr. John Smith. Let me get over here, put my mouse over here. Again, thanks a lot for dropping by. Hopefully you're learning a whole lot when you come by and take a look. We love talking about this. We'll talk about this till the cows come home. And since neither one of us have cows, we'll talk about this forever. All right. Special task is canceled. Ooh, okay. Let's stick around. Throw some questions, anything like that in there. If you guys got questions, any of this stuff, just because we're talking doesn't mean we're not watching the little side stream there going on, and we can answer
Right.
questions and stuff that are related to this sort of thing. We can give you our opinion on it, and if we remember, we'll find the exact section of the book uh, where that sort of information can be found too to help you out. We absolutely love first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and we will talk this up till we're blue in the face. All right. Open hand fighting also allows the monk multiple attacks such time as the monk has attained fourth level high. Multiple attacks at fourth level. That's awesome. Fighters don't get it until seventh. Surprise. Surprise would be similar to the way things work with Rangers, although Rangers is a straight 1 pip on a d6 change, whereas with monks, your surprise goes down. Um, uh, First level experience monk is likely to be surprised as any other. This chance goes down to 32 and a half, 32% at second level. So it goes down by about 2% per level as you move through. Oh, I gotta find that one. Yeah. Well, appreciate it, Dr. John Smith 9. What happened to Dr. John Smith 1 through 8 would be my wonder. But,
I think he just gained a level. So
oh, that's what. Oh, that could be what it is. Yeah, he's
yeah,
got
he's
enough.
name level now.
Got enough XP to be Dr. John Smith level 9 there, yeah.
Yeah.
Or he's a cat. That's his last life right there.
Oh, I hope not.
He's going right. Now, here is another thing about thieves or monks that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Monks have the following thief abilities. Now, I can understand some of the abilities. Open locks didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Why would it? Well, that's your ninja class, I guess you could say, where they would be able to open locks. There's the assassins, but maybe. Find or
Right.
remove traps. But these are the changes that the monk in the Dragon Magazine 53 makes. They get rid of anything that would be considered thieving specific and just give him skills like finding traps. Yeah, he finds traps a whole lot easier than the average character does. Right? He can move silently, he can hide in shadows and hear noise and climb walls, sure. But he's not real well versed in picking locks or disabling traps and things like this.
Yeah, right.
That's the
Right.
changes that they made.
To be
Although
a
in
more
this,
perceptive type
right,
of thing for
right.
that
In this
monk.
version, they add them. Although the chance of falling while climbing the walls is the same that of a thief of equal level. Monks can escape taking damage as follows. So as long as he can maintain contact with a wall somehow or another while falling down it, he has the chance of reducing the damage, which is awesome. So he may slip
Yeah.
while he's trying to climb that wall, but he may avoid lethal damage on the way down. And monks must have the opportunity to periodically make contact with the wall during the descent. Wall is used by the monk to slow the fall as to no hit points of damage sustained from the fall. Note that when reference to a wall is made, any similar surface, such as a tree trunk, cliff face, and the like, are equally useful to the monk. Right, something that he can grab a hold of it here or there to re- uh, arrest his fall along the way. There's the list of the monk's ability tables, how their armor class changes. Now, I much prefer the effective armor class change in the 53 because it gives you a lower armor class at the beginning and kind of even if it still progresses through, but
Yeah, yeah. Like if we look at
yeah,
this, you're level 7, you get no dexterity adjustment to armor class, none of the special perks of the other characters, no experience point bonus for a high prime requisite, and this guy's stuck with an armor class of 5. That's
and
that's not
everybody
very
else in the
good.
party is better.
Much better,
Yeah.
generally.
So some adjustments to that. I like the Dragon 53, but this gives you an example of some of the powers. Now we'll go down there. Special abilities, and most of the Dragon 53 one has most of these same special abilities. They just rearrange some of the order. Right.
Right.
The ability to speak with animals as druids do begins at third level of experience. So he becomes Doctor Doolittle when he reaches level 3. This made a lot of sense to me here. This is what they do, right? Their you know mental capacities are up there. The ability to mask a mind so that ESP has only 30% chance of success. Power begins at fourth level, with each level of experience which the monk gains thereafter. Right, ESPing the monk's thoughts drop, so he can hide his thoughts from you without expending spells and stuff like the magic user have to do. Fifth level of experience, monk's not subject to diseases of any sort, nor is he ever affected by haste or slow spells. So while you're immune to being diseased, now that would be a subject of discussion. Lycanthropy, is that a disease or is that a curse? I think it's ruled both in some cases. But giant rats bite you and you get disease and stuff for them, and monk would just shrug that off without any concern for it. However, it does not gain the benefit of any haste spells, right? So you can't make him faster. On the converse of that, though, is once you go running up on that stone golem, the stone golem is not going to be able to slow him down either. He's not going to be
Right.
punching that stone golem because that's probably going to hurt his hands a little bit. But aside from that, yeah. So that while there's a benefit, there's also a drawback to some of it too. Self-induced catalepsy to appear dead, kind of like the feigned death kind of thing. And I've never really understood how feigned death really worked, why anybody would use it, why anybody would choose it. I've never run across the circumstances where that would be particularly useful. Although there's plenty of stories about people who lay down and pretend dead, and the bear just paws at him a little bit, forgets about him, and moves on because it's no, there's no entertainment or fun value or whatever it is that the bear finds from chasing people down out of it, um, or other violent animals like a moose,
Right.
you know. So maybe there are some useful circumstances where it's in there, but you're in the dungeon and you feign death in front of that roper. Well, he's just going to be an easy target now.
Yeah.
But
He's gonna pick you
carrion
up
is
and chew
just
your
fine
head
for
off.
them, right? Okay, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Let's see. You got the ability to heal damage. This is a nice one too. Um, the fifth edition gives fighters second wind, but monks had that before. Uh, Heal some of the damage on his or body. Amount of damage which can be healed is 2 to 5 hit points, d4 plus 1. This amount increases by 1 hit point with each level of experience thereafter. May be done once per day. Right. The only other character who has an innate healing ability in first edition Dungeons and Dragons is the Paladin. Yeah. Ah, let's talk about Rangers being worthless, huh? No, I think we can disagree about Rangers being worthless. Rangers are an outstanding class. There's a whole lot they can do, and this was on another discussion over there somewhere too about Rangers. And, yeah, why are they such a great class? Well, their melee abilities more than anything. They were modeled after Aragorn, where a lot of people think, well, what about Robin Hood? I don't think Robin Hood is a ranger. I think Robin Hood is just a fighter who lives out in the woods because he's hunted. You know,
I'm gonna go
oh,
off camera for a second. I'll be
you
right
got to
back.
do what you
I
got
can
to
still
do.
hear you.
Sure. All right. Well, let me make a note here. Thanks for at least stopping by, Gonzalo. Appreciate you dropping in. All right, trolling me over here about Rangers and magic arrows. All right, the ability to speak plants, as the Druids do, is a F power on them. Let's see. F power is achieved at level 8. Beguiling charms, hypnosis, and suggestion spells have only a 50% chance of affecting a monk of the ninth level of experience. All right, so you're resistant, 50% resistant to such magic. That's not the same as resistance, magic resistance, but that's just an innate 50%. Increases 5% per level thereafter, so the 10th level, such spells have but a 45% chance of affecting the monk. And it keeps going. Saving throws still apply if resistance fails. Telepathic and Mind Blast attacks, the Dungeons and Dragons monster manual, the Mind Flare upon a monk of the 10th level or higher are made as if the character had an 18 intelligence due to the monk's mental discipline. Why am I reading the 1E monk class? Because that is what's in the player's handbook. Yeah. You and I have had the discussion and stuff before, whereas I prefer the one out of Dragon 53. And I did mention that during this stream too, that's my preferred monk. But this is the one that's in the book. And we're discussing special characters that are in the book.
Right.
Right. At 11th level and higher, spells of experience, monks are not affected by poison of any type. So you're immune to poison at 11th level. The Dragon magazine one does a little bit earlier. Your Geas and quest spells have no effect upon monks of 12th or higher level. So once you get up there, a little bit of power or ability, magic users can't make you go find stuff for them unwillingly. The last ability, again, and perhaps the most terrible power, is that of the fabled attack, which enables the monk to set up vibrations in the body of the victim. I'm not sure where this came up, but the quivering palm, monk merely touches his victim to set up deadly vibrations. Can be virtually any creature. It can be attempted once a week. Must touch the intended victim within 3 melee rounds, or the power is drained for 1 week. So once you set things up, you got to be able to make that hit. No effect on undead creatures or creatures which can hit by only by magical weaponry. So even though you have the ability to strike creatures that could only be struck by magical weaponry, your quivering palm ability doesn't work. Victim cannot have more hit dice than the monk using the power, and in any event, the total hit points of the victim cannot exceed those of the monk by more than 200%, or the power has no effect. So even though the monk has d4 hit dice, he can still affect creatures up to 200% of his hit points total. So, as a what level is the K? K comes in at 13, so that would be 13 dice. A 13th hit die, well, a 12 hit die monster is probably going to have a whole lot more hit points than the monk would, but we got up to 200%. Yes, play an illusionist next. Absolutely. Maybe that's what we'll do for next week's stream. We'll talk about the alternative um, cleric and magic user class. We'll talk about druid and druid specials, and then the illusionist and the illusionist specials. Illusionist is one of those highly underrated, definitely.
Yeah, and they introduce, of course, their own mechanic, with
Yep,
regard to
absolutely. And things are
disbelief
changing around. Right.
being, yeah, yeah, being a
It is a pretty
prerequisite
cool
for a
character.
saving throw.
Uh, Number of strictures which the monk character must abide by. Restrictions apply to one armor and weapons, treasure, magic items usable, strength and ability adjustments, henchmen, and advancement level as follows. Armor. Cannot use any armor, right? Well, cannot wear it. Weapons, which would include shields, which would be handy. I would wonder why that would be so, but they can't use shields. Weapons usable by monk characters are shown in character class table 2. Weapons not listed cannot be used. So anybody can basically pick up any particular item and use it at a non-proficiency level, but monks cannot use anything but what's on their list. We do cleric illusionist. We probably could. Let's see. Monks, like paladins, may not retain more than a small fraction of whatever treasure they gain. That's their livelihood, and that's the way they live life, right? If you read stories and stuff about the Shaolin monks and stuff, they begged for food, and they go and on the monastery they grew their own and were dependent on donations and stuff like this. They didn't go out and earn money or anything like that. Monk may possess no more than 2 magic weapons and 3 other magic items. See number 3 below. At any time, while monks may retain money sufficient for their modest needs and support their henchmen, see 5 below, all other treasure and excess magic items must be bestowed upon non-player religious institutions. Right? You can't give this to your party just because you can't carry it, right? So your share, you got to donate it to, orphanages and stuff like this. Magic items usable by the monks include all magical varieties of weapons listed, unless prescribed, rings, and those miscellaneous magic items which are usable by thieves. No other magic items of any sort may be employed by monks. So rings, ring of protection, be highly useful for a monk here since his armor class suffers a little bit. But you can't use cloak of protection because that is not part of the list of items that you can use. Let's see. Monks do not gain any bonuses either with respect to increasing 2 hit probability or to increase hit points of damage for strength ability. So the only useful thing that a monk would have with an 18 strength would be the open doors roll. Until attaining the rank of a master, monks may not have any hirelings or henchmen at all. So monk can't hire anybody to follow along with him in the group. 6th level experience, monks may hire persons on a short duration basis for the duration of a single adventurer only. Right? Okay, we're going in the mountains. We need a teamster to take our wagon with us or something. At this level, they may also require up to 2 henchmen. Henchmen may be fighters, but not paladins or rangers, thieves or assassins. With each level experience above the 6th, which monks attains, he or she may add one additional henchman until the maximum number established by the monk's charisma score is reached. So you can't get them all at once. You got to build them up slowly. Monks will gain followers upon attaining 8th level. This is discussed hereafter. Okay. Can only be a limited number of monks above 7th level. Right. Same thing applies with druids. And we can talk about that during druids too, where there's only a certain number of grandmasters. And in order to attain the next level up, they have to defeat in combat the one above them to move up into that position. When a monk player attains 8th level of experience, he or she will gain a number of monks as followers upon defeating the monk which held the 8th level position that the player character has now gotten. He or she will attract 2 to 5 first level monks if the player has a monastery or monastery like building to use as a headquarters. Right, so there's more incentive to go out and clear land and set yourselves up in the woods with a monastery like the fighters or clerics and stuff do, or the wizard gets his wizard tower. All followers with the exact same alignment as the monk player character. If he or she changes alignment, the current followers will desert, but new ones can still be gained by advancement in level. Right. All followers of a monk are as loyal as his or her other henchmen. They automatically leave service when they attain a level of superior master, 7th level, because their next thing is to defeat you to move up in level. So your henchmen would go off and find other monks to defeat. Yeah. Ooh, Stephen Kennedy here. Right. Never played the monk in AD&D. I've played this one once. Didn't get far.
My buddy actually played one, and he named himself "Come Get Some." But that's the only one I remember DMing. He died a quick and
Somebody got some then, huh? Didn't they?
pathetic death. Yeah.
Ooh, DLS and D is back. No, he didn't miss much in multiclassing. When did he leave? We were talking about dual classing. I think we were talking about the Bard when he wandered off to go look at somebody else's stream. Um, we
Oh,
talked about the Bard a little bit, and then we went
shame.
over here and talked about the other special character, the class, the Monk. Um, Next time the two of us get together, we'll talk about Druids and Illusionists because those are other special classes that I don't think get enough respect.
They really don't, and they have enough unique mechanics to make them particularly interesting. It's just
Well,
a
I mean,
matter
some of
of
the
parsing that
benefits
stuff.
right off the top of my
Yeah,
head, I can think of a druid gets neutralized poison as a 3rd level spell, not the 4th level spell like a cleric does. And poison
right.
is a big problem in old school D&D.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing is true. I mean, of course, on the druid side, some of the cleric stuff that's not specifically related to them, they get at a later level. But the same thing is true for magic users and illusionists. So, like, I think illusionist will get detect magic at level 2, but he's going to get detect illusion at level 1,
Level
which
one,
is a
right?
higher level for the magic user.
Which kind of makes sense.
So
That's his
it's
job. Yeah, he
yeah,
should.
exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
and
Yeah, and I really like that
I am
stuff.
terrible with names. I
One
can't
thing I want to
remember
say,
DLSD's name again. Mike, was it?
Dale, you can call him
Dale.
Mike, Michael, Dale. You can call him.
Okay,
I think you can call him. I don't
go.
know. I think you can
You
call
two
him
go
whatever
hard.
you want
Watch
though.
2 full other streams, and you're still dropping rockstar knowledge over here. I don't.
Thanks for showing up, buddy.
The rockstar knowledge was during the bard discussion. Yes. Yeah.
This monk, though, if I might say so,
I'm,
is definitely the most restricted character class
yep.
there has ever been in any game. Uh, period. Yeah,
Yep.
Rangers do get druid spells,
Rangers do
and
get.
I think it is up to yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. To be able to start casting druid spells is really really handy. Like the idea, but it seemed a bit odd to me. And a lot of and well, Stephen Kennedy, 4130. Yes, it was kind of odd to people. That's why it was dropped into second edition. Um, but the what is it, Oriental Adventures? Yeah, that's the name of the book. Had come out before then. Um, they tried to pull it away from being a staple in Dungeons and Dragons itself and just bring it into a setting specific type book like Oriental Adventures, and they definitely tweaked it there quite a bit as well to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And they added some of those other classes. I
Yeah,
mean, I would have liked to see those classes. And of course, you can pick and choose and take out of the rule books what you want and insert into your campaign. Some of those in Oriental Adventures, the Wu Jin was real cool. I think that was what the Oriental magic user, the Shukinja. You know, there were a few things there. I don't much care for the races unless I were in an Oriental themed campaign,
sure,
but
sure.
one of these other character classes wandering out of the East kung fu style, like TV show kung fu style, and ending up in an Occidental setting would be pretty cool.
Yeah, if we start talking about old TV series, we might lose an audience here. what are these
Yeah,
guys? What are these guys talking
I
about?
was just
David
generally
Carradine,
speaking.
that
I
guy
don't even
died a
know
few
what
years
you're.
ago, right? Ah, here we go. It is Michael, but I can call you Betty, and Betty, when you call me, you can call me Al. There we go. Okay, but don't call me
Can you
Shirley.
call him Al or AI?
Ah, yes, the font. Yeah, magic missile is useless for a ranger, right? For magic user, I would take charm person. Probably, yeah, charm person would be a good one for a ranger. Um,
Indeed.
let's see, what other good first level spells would be good for a ranger? Sleep is always sleep is always intensely useful. That would be a second level spell in there. I mean, that is no matter what rate level you are. It's a
Right.
minion control spell. Um, well, we're on the subject of special characters, so let's talk about magic user spells. Let's see. Charm Person would be an excellent one for a ranger. Dancing Lights isn't too bad a one either. Detect Magic would always be highly useful. Find Familiar. Having a familiar as a ranger is not a terrible idea. Um, Protection from Evil, not a bad idea. So there are definitely some useful magic user spells that a ranger could make use of.
Yeah,
Here's
Dancing
another
Lights would be a
old
good one.
series comedy routine. We're, we're really dragging the bottom of the barrel.
Familiars. Yeah, familiars are really problematic. Well, there's a couple of things with familiars. One of them is that almost nobody knows what they actually provide to the magic user because it's buried in stuff. Another one is if your familiar dies, you're hosed. In But of course, almost nobody knows what that does. So maybe you're not that host, you know. But if you go by what's in the
Mm,
monster manual, you you know you're a host.
yeah,
You might lose 2 levels of experience. You might instantly die if the thing travels more than a mile from your location. you know,
right.
it's bad news, right?
Yeah, and also
They're
right
great if
on
they're
your
on your shoulder,
you lose their hits. Um, you lose permanently. If they die, you lose their hit points permanently off your total hit points. That's a drawback to them. But to have a little handy animal is fantastic. Beastmaster. That's probably the closest thing I
right?
can think of as to a ranger with familiars.
Featherfall's real good.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, Featherfall. Yes, exactly. Only the monk can reduce damage from falling. Everybody else must rely on Featherfall. Yeah.
Right, and you would actually think that the thief, being that he can climb walls, would be able to likewise reduce damage, but maybe it's more a function of the monk being able to like tumble,
So,
you know,
yeah, tumble,
when he hits
arrest
the
his
ground.
fall, and stuff like this on the way down. Whereas the thief didn't never develop those sorts of skills or abilities.
Right.
We've got a question here from Mike. When are you coming on for another Chartmaster stream, Gonzalo? Well, Gonzalo and I will talk about that. I know with the way our schedules kind of work, probably a regular stream isn't going to be possible, but at best, I think we'll probably do maybe every other Saturday. But we both got a couple of different things too. Yeah, probably another week or two before we, at minimum, before we get to another one. Won't be next week because next weekend, Saturday, I am doing what they call a disaster day drill at work, and the week after that is more classes on a Saturday for PA students. So it might actually be into May before I can get to do another Saturday stream with Gonzalo. But Rollmaster is still another
Yeah, and
excellent game, and I will talk that one up.
I typically I end up missing those, and I don't mean to. They just happen to a lot of times they fall on days where I've got a game later in the night, and I gotta wrangle whatever it
I
is,
can
the
understand, no
cats.
problem. They're there. You can
Yeah,
always watch
I
the
like those.
stream them a little bit
Right.
later. Yeah. Yeah. We will be starting Rollmaster character creation next, right? Yeah. Well, then we'll stick to my theme of character creation, and we'll talk about Rollmaster character creation next. Yeah, we'll get into it because we discussed the basics of the game and the different realms of magic and stuff. So now is probably the best time to start talking about character creation for Rollmaster as well. I like the Dragon magazine Barbarian. I don't recall the exact differences between that one and the one that came out in Unearthed Arcana. I would have to look them up again. Um, I again, I think some of the stuff that was in our Unearthed Arcana is kind of broken. The Barbarian's one of them. Yeah,
I think they had a couple, didn't they? One of them in issue 50 something or something like that, and then one of them in say, I don't know. But
I'd
I
have to
think
look them
one
up.
of
There's
them
an
was
answer. There's a
largely
question
pulled
we got
over.
right there. Well, not a question. It's a statement. I like the Dragon magazine Barbarian. We can add that
Yeah.
to our list of things to look up and talk about too. Is some of the editions that came out in the magazines, which were considered to a certain degree official.
Yeah, like your monk, for example. The monk variants, the bard variants,
Sure.
anything related to barbarian. And then, of course, various things in Unearthed Arcana, maybe stuff that we find cool versus stuff that we find not so cool. Because
Right.
there is a real, from my perspective, and I don't want to soapbox and all that stuff, but from my perspective, there's a real lack of appreciation for basically all the Orange Spine books or Orange Spine original books, except maybe for Monster Manual too. Everything that came out 85 and later, like once Gygax was gone, it's like I don't mess with that. But there were some
I got them
really
all for my
great things.
collection. Yeah. I've added them
Yeah,
all to my collection because
yeah,
I need a collection of all the first edition books. Right. But
yeah,
now Monster
absolutely. I've
Manual
got them in
2,
my collection too.
well, Monster Manual 2 is where they started to break the monsters. So,
They did, and that's unfortunate. There are some good entries in there and some good art, but Unearthed Arcana has some good stuff in it. Oriental Adventures has some good stuff in it. And
right.
once you get to Wilderness Survival Guide and Dungeoneer Survival Guide, yeah, you don't. If you want to go full like math on all of this kind of stuff, you can with those
Sure.
resources. But just the ideas that are in there and the research that's involved with being able
Hmm.
to run indoor and outdoor games with a little bit more intuition is useful, and Manual of the Plains is super useful too. That must have been a massive undertaking. I don't agree with everything they did in there, but a lot of it was really good.
Yeah. We'll be talking quite a while if we're going to get through the Orange Spine books and stuff as well. So,
Tell you, I got nothing but time till I die, man.
yeah.
Time enough for the earth and the grave.
We can talk plenty about that stuff. Well, heck, we're running here about hour 40 minutes or so. And if you got anything specific you wanted to cover here, we'll next time we'll definitely dive into druids and illusionists because those are two excellent classes.
Right.
Didn't have a problem with the monster manual tool. The fiend folio was even worse. The monsters in the fiend folio were player character killer monsters. That's how they were kind of set up. Everybody
Uh,
was in love with the Gith Yankee and all of that, but just yeah, yeah.
for some reason, the cover, I mean, maybe it's the cover. I shouldn't say for some reason, but maybe the cover is the reason. But I
I think
happen to
so.
have four Fiend folios, and I have no idea why. Um, so if anybody wants a Fiend folio, hit me up.
I've got one because I needed to complete my collection of first edition
Right.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. And I flipped through it. There's probably a couple of monsters in there that I would use, for something different. Yes.
Yeah, and there's some pretty nice artwork.
There you go. You want to get rid of some of your four? There you are.
Hit me up at any time, man. I'm not a I won't scalp you like eBay will.
So you guys are crazy. Yes, certifiable.
You stole my word.
Crazy because crazy about this stuff. We again, like I mentioned when we first got together, started talking about this. For first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was basically my first love in role playing games. I played another one before starting this one, but when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, that's why I was hooked. I kind of liked high fantasy. Um, it was good. It was a lot of fun, but this there was just more stuff with this, and there was a lot more into it. It was great. WSG, Wilderness Survival Guide. Yeah, there's some good stuff in Wilderness. Isn't that where they, if I remember correctly, start diving into the secondary skills more so than
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, non-weapon proficiencies, right? And that's what they. It's not the, it doesn't really roll off the tongue, and it's not like
No,
a fantastic term for it. But they get into some of that stuff, and I like, they delve deeply into things like exposure to the elements, generating weather, how you might do things like cross chasms, uh, information on drowning, information on flying, and all that. And there's something in there for everybody. That book is
sure.
seriously underappreciated. Yeah, Gary was gone. Kim Mohan did it, and a couple of the other guys, but it's excellent. Good book.
Here we go. Weapon specialization is needed for 1E fighter class. Well, we can disagree on that one. Yeah. Otherwise, they're just
I do
spellcasters
like
doing
weapon
everything.
specialization.
What's that?
I do like weapon specialization, but
Uh,
it depends on what's going on, right? It depends on how the game is set up. Because if weapon special, I don't like it for every game, and I could take it or leave it. But my assumption as the DM is going to be that if the characters have weapon specialization, since most monsters fight kind of as fighters, and explicitly have
yeah,
fighters as fighters in something like second edition, they're going to have it too, right? Anybody with the weapon, um, almost most creatures, bugbears, hobgoblins,
right. I'm
ogres,
going to take my hill
giants.
giant and double specialize in club.
Yeah, that's the only thing the hill giant uses. He's obviously good at it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like exceptional strength, which should have sort of been expanded to fall over the monsters in ways. I've
Have you
looked
guys
at
ever
it, yeah,
checked out
read some of it.
Hyperborea? I've read a little bit of Hyperborea. I haven't really done much. I'm not. Yeah, I'm going to run an all orange spine 1E game in Greyhawk, and your names will never be spoken again. Okay. Your game, run it as you see fit. Exactly right. That's how all of this stuff is. Yeah. I, yeah. No, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of good, useful information in the Orange Spine books. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it all, but go in there and take the advice. And a lot of that stuff that was in there was, well, you know, all these questions these guys are getting asking. Well, what do you guys do for this? What do you guys do for that? You know, and they were just saying, well, make something up. Well, here's some books that give some maybe some new dungeon masters some guidance on what would be reasonable for these things. You know, drowning. Right? What
Yeah,
is reasonable for
and
drowning? Well, here's a set of rules that we use, and we'll put them in a book to make them kind of official. You know, and there's an example for you to go with. You know, as opposed to trying to wing everything.
exactly. And it gives you it gives you resources, sort of kind of instructing you how to run these types of campaigns too. Just general useful information on how to build out, your sandbox game, how to build out a dungeon. They talk about linear versus matrix style dungeons and how those things can coexist. Just lots of really
Sure.
nice stuff. Something I really like about the later ones, because we got Fiendfolio, which was a conglomeration of monsters sourced from White Dwarf and from magazines, the UK series, and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
We got Deities and Demigods, right, which was basically just taken from um, what's it called again? Not Deities and Demigods, not Eldritch Wizardry, Gods,
Um,
Demigods, and Heroes,
Gods, gods,
right?
demigods, and heroes. Right. And
Yeah,
in that book was included ability scores higher than 18. Information on
right,
what those
right.
things should be. Yeah. So it was
Yeah,
useful
and
from that
Monster
aspect
Manual
too.
too,
Nowhere in there did
and
they
Monster,
expect anybody to go fight the gods, but they gave you statistics for
right,
them. So
right, and
characters
Monster
wanted to
Manual
do that.
too. We basically had monsters that came from modules that were published up to that point, and monsters that came from Dragon Magazine. But in Unearthed Arcana, basically everything was from Dragon Magazine. It wasn't until we got to Oriental Adventures, Wilderness Survival Guide, Dungeoneer Survival Guide, Greyhawk Adventures, Manual of the Plains, Dragonlance Adventures that we got original content written by TSR. You know, um, and that's what I like about those particular books is it's original content for the most part.
Sure. Giant strength. Yeah. What exactly giant strength? What did they do? What kind of strength ability scores, stuff like that, did they have? Because if you didn't have deities and demigods, well, what did a potion of giant strength give you? You know, didn't when it wasn't defined anywhere else. Um, the
Yeah,
only thing that was
18.
designed was ogre
you know,
gauntlets of ogre power, and an ogre is just 18 double lot, which a
right.
human could potentially have. Yeah. Let's see. You two should do an episode on. Well, I should be writing these ideas down that these guys are giving us instead of trying to go from memory because I'll sleep and forget all this stuff.
I'm gonna
You two
forget
should do
it
an
all
episode
too
on
unless I
stalking some of the
rewatch
early
it.
dungeons where it was left to the DM. Tips, tricks, what works, what doesn't. Um, I think
There's a lot of those too.
I think I might have done that. I think I might have actually put out a video. May not specifically be about that sort of thing, but I think I may have mentioned that kind of stuff in my mega dungeons video, where you put things in it like factions and stuff like this, and have things that are going on in the dungeon that characters can get involved in or have to avoid. Right, that MacGuffin may be down at the bottom, but you've got this orc tribe fighting that hobgoblin tribe, and the drow are down there trying to kill off the dwergar on the other side, and you got to get through all of that to get down to that MacGuffin on the bottom level. And I just gave away most of my Monday night game dungeon so, in, that, in that one description.
For shame.
Right, but that's how you build those things out and make them interesting. That's a great way of doing it. You know, when the game first came out, it was all neat and it was all new, and then just throwing things together willy nilly on the map was kind of fun, right? But then it kind of got a little bit stale, and but it kind of doesn't make sense why these things aren't fighting one another and that kind of stuff. They're not just statically waiting for you to open the door and pop out, right? And but it's for when it
Right.
comes to that, well, definitely we can do a video and talk about this sorts of things. But look up the Secret Undermountain, um, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage Hallister. That is probably the best way of hand waving why all these creatures who would never coexist together once at all are all of a sudden wandering around in a dungeon together. It's because that mad mage is kidnapping them from their lairs and throwing them into his dungeon. Yeah. So it's a cheap way of getting around it. But yeah. Let's see. Don't worry, who we all forget. Well, yeah. I have a lot more senior moments now than I used to. Yeah, this is a good point here. I like having the rules for ideas if I want them. Exactly. Where can I go find some information? Here's some ideas that other people will put out. I kind of like that. I'm going to use that one. Or I see what they're trying to do with this particular thing here, but I don't quite agree with it, so I'll tweak it. And here's the rule I'm going to use instead. You know.
Uh,
Oop,
yeah, and I
oh,
mean,
oh, look at this.
even if a
Jacqueline
lot of that stuff.
Lycurno. That name looks kind of familiar.
Oh, hmm.
I don't know. I don't trust that genetics of that person right there. That one. I think her father is pretty lame.
If you don't trust it, I don't trust it. That's the way it
You
rolls. I disbelieve.
Yes. Got my daughter Jacqueline poking in here and giving me maybe you're minding that crew SCRS and you get looking. Yeah, maybe they do. Yeah.
Your dad's great.
Yeah. Who me never seen me. Yeah. Thanks for stopping in and dropping in and saying hello here, Jacqueline. That was excellent. Appreciate it. Did you ever get to play Inferno by Judges Guild? So good. No, I have never done Inferno. I've got a lot of Judges Guild stuff. I collect a lot of it. I love their Wilderlands and the high uh, fantasy campaign setting and things like this, but I didn't pick a whole lot of their dungeons. I got Teagle Manor. I picked it up, I think, at a yard sale or something somewhere, and that's basically my only dungeon in that collection. So uh, maybe they will think you are a 3-year-old with progeria and take it. No. Yeah. There we go. Hey, Jacqueline, Dad's a treasure. I mean, a tad nerdy, but you get it. Yeah. Treasure, like in, as in I should be buried. Is that what? Yeah. On a deserted beach
The
somewhere. Yeah.
relic.
A relic. Yes. I corrupted my kids when they were young. I taught them to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we still play. Doing the same thing to my
Yes,
grandchildren too.
sir.
Yeah. Ah, you're not that old yet. When do I become that old? I'll be 60 in a couple of months.
That's not bad.
No, not terrible. Not terrible. It's life expectancy is a little further than that, so I think we're good. Alrighty. Well, what else do you think we need to cover? Anything else we got here tonight? Or are we going to go ahead and close this one out and then start planning the next on druids and illusionists
Yeah.
at least, and then we'll start throwing some other things in there too. We can um, figure out some other things, some filler and stuff to talk about it. We can talk 2 hours on
Right.
druids and illusionists. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose we could do the normal thing, right? Where I'll take this, download it, edit it, whatever,
Get
and
rid of
throw it
all
on my
the
channel on.
rambling.
Well, a lot of that stuff is fun. But do you want to do one of those on Saturday? Do we have anything? I don't think I
I
have anything
am
going on
running
Saturday.
a,
Oh, okay.
but that's in the evening. I'm running a game in the Guac from 5 to 9. I think it would be 4 Central, so for 4 hours, so 5 to 9 Eastern. I mean, if you wanted to do something after that, that would be all right, or before that, that would be okay too. Just I'll be running the
Right.
old
Well,
school essentials with dungeon crawl with old school essentials at the Guac to help.
Yeah, nice, nice. I hope that goes real well for you. It's always a good time.
Yep, my dungeon crawl is my favorite thing. I got a whole big one built out. That's what I use for my one shots on the paid gaming site, and I've got repeat customers. So
Right.
apparently, I'm doing something right. So I figure I'll
Yeah.
run
Well,
it.
we'll figure out.
Are there?
Yeah, yeah.
Here we
That should
go.
be
Are
a
there
lot
any
of
one e
fun to.
rules that most people follow but you've never agreed with? Well, and we mentioned the monk here to a certain degree, but yeah, we can even look at that too. We can add some of that in there too. Are there any one e rules that most people follow but you've never agreed with? As far as rules and stuff go, what doesn't make sense? What could be different? Could be better? Um,
Right.
Hand-to-hand combat, right? Unarmed combat. That's one of them that could be.
Yeah.
What is the guac? The great online underground gaming convention by the Dungeon Delver. If you go to the Dungeon Delver and look at his stream, uh, he's got. I think that should show up in there. You got information on there how to go ahead and join his great online underground gaming convention and play some games. It's all free games and stuff in there. Nobody needs to pay for any of those games. Keep that in mind. That's all free stuff. He's running a nice convention to get people together playing games, playing role playing games. So drop by and check it out if that's something you think you may want to take a look at. Well, let's go ahead and call this one here, and we'll get start arranging our notes for the next one. Give me a holler what day you might want to do your um, restream or whatever, and we can put that together. Oh, you're muted or something here. We can't hear you. It might
Yeah,
kick in.
and it will do, and that's real useful because we can actually sit there and chat, and then
Yep,
we can take. It's a lot easier to take notes when you're chatting with everybody on what to do next than it is to talk. And because I feel like if
and
I'm
try and keep
doing
an eye on
this,
it,
then that's
looking
not.
flapping, flipping back and forth, then try and keep track of what we're doing here. Whereas this can run, and we can pick up questions and stuff in the
Right.
stream. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll go ahead and end this one here, and we'll chat again a little bit later. Thanks for joining me again
Had a
there,
great time.
Swords, and I will talk
Pleasure.
at you a little bit later. Well, let me come back to just me, of course, because that's all anybody wants to see. Now, thanks for joining the stream here. For again, go over to Doom Sword's channel and take a look at his stuff and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to his. Like and subscribe to mine. Hit that bell icon if you want for notifications for the next time we get together. We'll definitely do a whole lot more chatting about First Edition Dungeons and Dragons, and we'll catch you guys again. Looks to be this way next Thursday. We'll hit it on the at least the Druid and Illusionist, and we'll probably ramble on about a lot more from that again. So I appreciate you guys for coming on out and joining us on this stream, and we will see you next time.